Ahoy, hoy, friends. Welcome to the Salon. We are so happy you are with us. We are so excited to talk about Star Trek Prodigy Season 2. And we are, of course, excited to welcome co-executive producer and writer Aaron Waltke, who will be joining us later this evening. Super excited for the conversation we'll be having. Really appreciate y'all joining us for it. Want to get a couple of announcements out of the way. Want to remind folks, there's more ways to enjoy the chaos. We have a new website, salontrek.com. We'll be highlighting tonight a little bit later. There you can find highlight videos, clips to all of our, or links to all of our various ways to enjoy the fun. We're now on Spotify. And I want to plug again our Patreon. We've got a free community tier so that folks can join in the fun that way. We'll be expanding that in the next couple of weeks. And if you are so inclined, if you wanted to throw a couple of dollars our way to help defray the costs of website hosting and the broadcast system and materials for when we go to STLV to hand out and that kind of thing, we certainly appreciate it as well. I also want to remind folks, as if you need a reminder, you can't get away from the news daily. There's an election coming up. The Salon stands firmly with Kamala Harris. We are excited to have her be our next president, but that won't happen unless we act like we're 10 points down every day until now, from now until the election. The way that you can get involved, you can, number one, check your voter registration. The rules change depending on where you might be. Purges happen, and the deadlines are coming up in various places very soon. So you can go to vote.org to make sure that you are registered at your current address. Sign up to vote by mail. Little secret from me in the campaign world, as soon as you vote, most campaigns will get updated lists, not who you voted for, but that you have finished your ballot and sent it in, and the calls and the texts will stop. So vote for Kamala and pro-equality champions up and down the ballot and get that ballot in. Whoever you're going to be voting for, check your registration now, vote.org. That said, let's get into the Salon. I'm super excited to have the full senior staff with us here tonight. Let's bring them up on the stage. And I am going to start this evening with Joanne. Joanne, hello, hello. How are you, darling?
I'm well. How are you?
I am also well. I am hawked up on a late afternoon coffee, and I've got all of my emotional support beverages, a tea, magnesium something or other, a Romulan ale, and of course some water.
Coffee is life.
Yes, every day. William, hello, hello, William. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready. I'm galvanized, and I'm ready to take the crown.
Excellent. But before it might get snatched, let's talk to Ken about that. Ken, welcome. How are you, buddy?
Hello. Hello, Commander, and everybody. I'm excited about today's episode. And yeah, it's really great to be here with everybody, the entire senior team. It's going to be a great show.
Yes, yes, yes. And speaking of great show, it will be because Krista is with us. Krista, hello, hello. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How is everyone?
So jazzed. Speaking of jazz, I will work on this. Matt, how are you?
I'm great. Apparently, I'm also jazzed, so I'll help you with that transition in there a little bit.
I'll take it. I'll take it. And then we've got Benji. Benji, how are you, my friend? How's Canada?
Great. It's good here. We're all ready to be Waltke'd.
Yes.
Tonight.
And rounding out your co-host and mine, Trevor. Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
Greetings. I am also jazzed. I love all jazz except Dixieland.
Interesting.
Because you can't dance to it.
Ah.
It's a minuet line. Come on, season 1, TNG, work with me.
I'm trying. So somebody else join in this conversation.
I actually did get that. I wasn't sure if you were going to continue the entire thing all the way through. So,
has anyone here ever heard of a show called Star Trek? It's a little thing that I like to talk about.
It sounds interesting.
Next generation. The
Mm,
next
indeed.
generation.
I heard about it. I thought it was canceled in the 60s.
Oh,
No, that was the 80s.
Rings of Power Pod.
The
I'm
90s,
in the wrong
actually.
place.
Ladies,
Uh,
ladies, you're both pretty. Stop it.
yes. All right, friends. Well, should we talk about Star Trek?
yes, let's.
About what?
About Star Trek. Let's get into it. But before we do, we must, as you all know, we simply must set an intention.
Indeed, we must. And in honor of 11001001, I would like to. No, I'm kidding. We're not doing anything about the episode, other than my horrible intro line that apparently sank like a stone. What I would like to talk about today, you may like it, you may not, is everyone's favorite comfort episode. We posted it on our website. It's part of everyone's bio. I'm sure we'll give you a sneak preview of that later. But I would love to hear everyone's comfort Trek. And as always, I will start us off by sharing that my comfort episode is a TNG episode from season 5, and it is the episode Disaster. I don't know exactly why I love it so much. I just do. It's fun. It's fish out of water for lots of people. It's Picard dealing with children, which is in and of itself a disaster. He can only deal with children when they're in their 20s, but look like they're in their 30s. It's just it's a fun Troy episode. Troy voice. Oh, thank you, Will. I was waiting. I wouldn't have continued until you did it. And it's also a great Ro episode, even though she's horribly wrong. She's also right, which I kind of stole Troy's line there. Bev and Geordi in a cargo bay trying to not breathe. It's fun. So anyway, I love the episode. There are some really wacky things that are wrong with the episode, and I can't wait to talk about that on another Salon. It's for a whole other episode, and we could rip that one apart and put it back together again. And maybe we will one day. But until then, I'd like to go around the room and hear what your comfort episodes are. And we'll start next to me with the lovely and adorable Benji.
Thank you, Trev. My comfort episode is Strange New Worlds, Those Old Scientists. That's what I said, right? It's there somewhere. Because it's like being inside joy, as if joy were something tangible and you could wrap yourself up in it like a blanket. And because it makes me laugh my ass off every single time I watch it, and it makes me very, very happy. I really love like how you get to see Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid's chemistry come through on the screen. Like we don't know how it works behind the scenes on Lower Decks, but the two of them do have incredible chemistry. It just works for the episode. I would live to see them do anything together after that. It's just incredible. And like on my personal rating scale, there's probably, I could count on my hand, on like one hand, the number of episodes I've rated a 10 in my life, and that one gets a 10. Yeah, it's a favorite.
It's probably the one Strange New Worlds episode I have rewatched the most. So
Yeah.
I have to agree with you that it's a delight
Same.
and a joy. As if joy were no, I'm sorry. Thank you. We will move on to Commodore Rix, Mr. Matt.
Mine I actually just watched last night out of comfort. It's always been The Chase. It's one of those ones where it, to me, boils down everything of Star Trek into Star Trek. You have every major player in Star Trek. You have every major enemy, even though they're not necessarily enemies. In the episode, you kind of suspend this animosity to come together to figure out this thing that is bigger than all of us. And I will say that I think one of the most powerful, if you fully understand Star Trek and you know everything, I think one of the most powerful lines and scenes is right at the end when that Romulan commander hails Picard in that awkward, like, well, we're going to be going. Like, I can't say I love you, but I love you. Like, it's this like moment where they both have that like, we are the most at odds enemies for centuries, or for a century now, and I can acknowledge that maybe this does change things, and I think it's so Star Trek to me. It's almost like if joy was tangible and it was something you could wrap yourself up in like a blanket. So yeah, the change.
Weird. I was just gonna say the same thing. Also, if there can be a Vulcan hello, why can't there be a Romulan goodbye? And I feel like both should be awkward. Makes total sense to me. Thank you, Commodore. Speaking of lovely and talented, Krista.
Mine is the big goodbye, just because it is a complete one-off, silly episode that sort of introduces the idea of AI going haywire, AI not understanding that they're AI, holodecks not being as safe as they're led to believe. I enjoy that it's kind of the little things where they just get to stop being who they are and put on another person suit and like invest. And every time I watch it, I laugh when they are so excited when the bad guys, when the gangsters pull the guns, because they don't seem to understand that it's actually dangerous. And so they, with smiles on their faces, get into position like, okay, let's keep going. And they have no concept of the fact that they're in danger. And it's just so innocently stupid that I just don't understand how you couldn't like it just as a one-off, it has no meaning whatsoever. Just take it for what it's worth. And it's really kind of funny. And it ends with a lot of guttural word salad being thrown at the view screen so that the diplomatic mission can be completed. But it's also a nice beginning and balance to attach for Picard and Crusher. I think Crusher was very obvious that she wanted to climb that tree and mark all the branches. And I think once you get to attached, it's more rather like running around kicking puppies. So I prefer the kind of playfulness that we get with that initial season.
So we went from a Romulan goodbye to the big goodbye to hello, Ken. You are Knuff. Please tell us, what is your comfort
I am
episode?
Knuff. Get ready for the tosser alert, because my comfort episode is Tomorrow is Yesterday from the original series, which I say still is the #1 cold teaser in the entire series, where they're scrambling the fighter jets. If you didn't know you were watching Star Trek at the time, you had no idea what it was. And they're scrambling the fighter jets, they're calling for a UFO, and that very last scene of the Enterprise very, very jaggedly climbing up through the atmosphere right before the opening credits, I think is one of the best cold opens still in the entire history of the series. It's a great comedy. It introduces time travel in a big way into Star Trek with the slingshot effect, which of course is carried forward throughout the rest of the franchise history. And it's really cool because it's just fun. It's got a sassy computer. Why it's a sassy computer is questionable in today's time, but it is a sassy computer, which I think is very fun to have. And it's got some great lines, including when the Colonel says to a captured Captain Kirk, "I'm going to lock you up for 200 years. And Kirk's reply, "That ought to be just about right." It's just a great episode all around, and it's definitely a comfort episode for me. Tomorrow is Yesterday.
Speaking of great cold opens, Will.
What does that even mean? Anyway,
I have no idea.
great, love it, perfect. Thank you so much. I flipped the script, and I don't really have a comfort episode, but I have a comfort movie, and it's the motion picture. It's just one of those things that I love to put on, like between the music and the visuals of it, and I think the remasters we've had, especially the one that just came out not too long ago, the 4K one, I think they look fantastic. I love 70s looking sci-fi, so like everything being like slick and smooth and clean, and the weird pajama uniforms that you can see everyone's dick line in is so funny. And it's ridiculous. If you once you notice it, it's like, okay, every man in that one has full pork sword just the entire time. So enjoy. And then like gotta get out of my system now. Anyway, yeah, and then like Captain Kirk's like dentist uniform he wears, that short sleeve number. Looks like he looks like a dentist. Other than that, I think it's like the most Star Trek of the Star Trek movies, which is weird to say, but it's just anytime I need to do something like clean the house, I put it on, or if I need something soothing.
Dear
No
God,
dying,
thank you for
not
that.
allowed.
Excuse me. I need to put it on right now. I need to be soothed. No, I just put it on. It's the one thing I go back to. And I didn't realize it until that question came up. And that's my comfort thing. Anyway, Joanne, take it away so I can die off camera.
Will's oath of chastity is also on file.
Yes. I everything has been replicated, even eye moisture. Yeah.
Gross. My comfort episode is Darmok. And as, someone who talks for a living, it's deeply meaningful to me. It's about trust and sacrifice and removing bias and dealing with conflict, that at the core of exploration and collaboration is communication. And I love it. Plus it's the great, I guess, and also late, right? Paul Winfield. Um, just an incredible scene. Him and Picard at the end when Picard is telling the Gilgamesh myth, just gets me every time. It's just a great, great scene. And he didn't say much, but just acts it brilliantly. The body language and the physicality while he's listening to Picard. It's just brilliant. I love it.
Fearless leader.
Yes, indeed. I just to be consistent, I hate showing my pictures and whatnot, but this is me. Also loved discovering through this process that regardless of my an inordinate amount of time put into this very simple website, that's not a brag. I was bad at it. I love noticing that some things are off, but we'll fix that. And everybody should just check out the website anyway. My comfort episode is from Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Devil's Due. I love it. It is a holdover phase 2 idea that got to be flushed out, luckily, in The Next Generation. And it's like, I am not the biggest tosser that there is on this salon, certainly. But while I appreciate the original series, this episode is quintessential Trek. There's a godlike figure, but things aren't quite what they seem. And she is serving cunt throughout. I love Ardra. I kind of wish she won. I wanted to find some kind of loophole. I love it. And I'm also excited to share for those who aren't yet on the free tier of the Patreon, or the paid if you want to be, we are going to be doing commentary on Devil's Due. It'll be myself, Krista, Trevor, and Will. We're going to be recording that this weekend. And for anybody who gives $5 to help cover the costs of the salon, we'll be getting access to that bonus content. So I'm excited to watch that. And that'll be our September bonus content. And moving into October, we'll put out another poll and do a couple of other things for the free tier as well. All of the episodes that we had in the poll that didn't get selected this month will be back in rotation. So get into it. Patreon.com/Salon Trek. I'm excited. Devil's Due is a fantastic episode. So excellent intention setter as always, Trevor. Thank you so much. Let's talk about Star Trek Prodigy. We are, like I said, so excited to be talking with Aaron Waltke. He'll be joining us later this evening. Before then, we've been doing these deep dives every week on 2 episodes a week for the last 10 weeks. And so we thought we should do a retrospective on the full season. So let's kick things off. I wanted to see if anybody had any favorite episode that they wanted to highlight and tell everybody to go watch again, or share why it's your favorite episode, just as a quick little kickoff. Anybody? Dead air. Love it. William, go for it. Will, and then Krista.
Cool. My favorite, I guess it's technically a 2-parter, but the last flight of the Protostar, I found myself enjoying that a lot more, and then rewatching it after we had finished again. I think it's like the moment in the series where everything kind of started falling into place a little bit, and like the character started to develop and mature, and like the basically rewriting of Chakotay, like the kind of like soft reboot that happened with him, and the relationship with the kids and him, and like that speech with him and Dahl, I think was the more I watched the episode, the more I don't know. It just was the one that I returned to, and I found myself enjoying it the second time. And like, it's kind of a cool concept, like the island. Like I would have been fine with half the season with just them trying to get off the planet, because it was a really cool place and really thought out, even just for 2 episodes. But yep, Last Flight of the Protostar was my favorite.
Mine was Is There in Beauty No Truth? That is sort of the kid version of Midsummer. I like it because it is quintessentially human, in the sense that you have a non-corporeal being sort of on the outside and being able to experience what it is to be human. Because at our base, it is entirely based on senses. That's how we build our own identities. And I liked that they experienced this. They were after that were informed of the risk and Zero chose to stay with his group. And I think that at the end, it sort of comes full circle, because even though they have to reform themselves in somewhat of their original carapace, they have figured out how to make that work for them, and they could only have done that if they were afforded that opportunity. And I think a lot of our decisions as humans is based on adrenaline. It's based on fear. It's based on things that we necessarily take for granted.
Horniness.
Yeah. And so I liked that it was an entire episode devoted to somebody who would not take that for granted, who would look at that. And it was all very Bacchanalian, and it was just dancing and weird foods and just the joy of being able to experience that. And then in the end, for it to come full circle, and for them to be able to, it was an orgy planet. It was like Weird Risa.
Yeah, we just didn't see it because there was too much story to tell.
It was my favorite one. I just liked the way it made me feel, and I like that they went in that direction.
I'm so glad you said that, Krista, because this reminds me of something that I forgot to do. And by this, I mean Trevor just reminded me. Thank you, Trevor. A quick disclaimer about this show. We all love Star Trek. Star Trek Prodigy is a lovely show that is for everybody, but geared towards family. If you haven't picked up on it yet, normally I say this at the top. This particular show is not for kids. So just wanted to get that out of the way in case any little ones are watching at home because they stumbled upon the word Prodigy on YouTube. Go to bed, kids.
I do really appreciate the fact that we do that disclaimer at the beginning of every episode. And the one episode where we have one of the creators on is the one that we forget to do it until we're like, oh, by the way. So I just love that for all of us. It is actually very on brand for the entire salon.
I warned him that this is chaotic, and he's lurked in the chat a few times, so he knows what to expect. Anybody else had a favorite episode that they want to highlight? Trevor?
I have a favorite that no one has mentioned, and I wanted to share because I think it's unusual for me to have enjoyed it so much, but I loved Cracked Mirror. I'm not normally a big fan of the Mirror Universe. Depending on how most depictions of the Mirror Universe drive me nuts because it is mustache twirly and kind of silly. And Prodigy found a way to somehow take the scary, petrifying evil that Discovery gave us and make it kid-friendly in a weird sort of way. Like, even in Prodigy, it wasn't as campy as it was in TOS or TS9, which is impressive, first of all. But second of all, just made it more enjoyable for me personally. So while I don't normally gravitate towards those episodes, I enjoyed the Prodigy Mirror episode quite a bit. I also love when Star Trek gets humor right, and no matter how many times I see it, Mirror Jillian just kind of has me in tears every single time. It's hilarious. The line delivery is fantastic. Even the whales are evil. It just, I don't know. There's
And
something
the
adorable about
scar
it.
on the
Scar.
eye of this whale, like what? Like to Will's point a couple weeks ago, Jillian goes on away missions. So she's been through some shit, and Mirror Jillian got scratched to fuck. I love it.
Absolutely.
I still think about how we could get Jillian in more things, like how she would get beamed down to a planet. I still think about it. Like, would it be a force field of water? These are the questions we needed to ask Waltke. I need to jettison all my questions and ask just about like the physics of having Jillian on an away mission.
The logistics behind.
Yeah. You all have seen.
What if they have to take a shuttle? What if they have to take a shuttle? What are they going to do?
You've all seen.
They get the ship from Star Trek 4.
They just strap her to the top. What do they just like strap her to the top of like a deer or something? What are they going to do?
All around her that also.
Yeah.
I feel like a big bubble just around her head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like National Lampoon with a Christmas tree on the top, just traveling.
Why not? Like one of those like little shuttle pods they kept using in TNG that were like, why are you using this? The one that's like the compact, but it's just chilling over it. They're just floating around. That shit's hilarious.
I can only imagine the Google Doc preparing for the interview is 2 pages. If we were to add this, it would be another 6.
Because I have answers. I have questions and I need answers.
I'm seeing like a motorcycle with one of those side cabs.
Oh, a
motorcycle, but like
a sidecar for the shuttle.
Murph is in the side cab.
I feel like there was a 70s cartoon that had something like this, like a shark in a. I'm picturing a shark in
Jabberjaw.
Yeah, I think
Jabberjaw.
I think so.
Jabberjaw walked around on his fins and he laughed. So, and the other thing is, in the animated series, they were able to swim. They were able to swim underwater with those force fields. So why couldn't the force fields be in reverse and Jillian could have a force field of water around her and just be on the away team?
These are the questions I need answered. How
does she roll around like she's in a bubble, or
no? She walks like Jabberjaw.
No, have you seen that?
Jabberjaw?
Have you seen that whole thing where they?
It's this level of seriousness that makes me enjoy that episode.
But it's. Have you seen the thing where they put the goldfish in a thing of water and it can drive? It's just a little tank of water with wheels, and depending on where it swims at, it can guide. That's what Jillian does.
Yeah,
she gets her own ATV. She gets her own Argo.
Yeah,
that was the original. See, there we go.
I love when scientists watch something like American Dad and think we should make that happen. The goldfish. Also Roger. Roger is delightful. Anybody?
Well, Roger is the aliens that are transitioning our youth, like they've been talking about. He is.
That sounds a little conspiracy theory. That there's a Vance plant in Matt over there, Ohio, brethren.
I did have to host him at an event once. It was as bad as you would think. So.
You got to protect Jadzia because they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats. Sorry.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats.
Does anybody remember Star Trek?
Anyway, racist lies aside, let's talk about Star Trek.
But also, last but not least, with respect to the episode that I named like 20 minutes ago, Hot Chote in the Mirror Universe is even hotter. So I just had to share that as well.
Yeah, he could get it, and I'll just throw
problematic gay alert.
That's something that I would add. Moving away from favorite episodes and talking about some of our favorite moments and character development. I will start with Chakotay because this season and the Prodigy team did something I thought was not possible. They made me a fan of Chakotay. I was not. Although, ironically, one of my favorite Voyager episodes is a Chakotay episode that was kind of referenced in Cracked Mirror. It's Shattered from season 7. I love that episode. Especially because they brought Seska back. That's what was missing from Prodigy as a Seska. Although Essentia she has some Seska-like qualities. But with Chakotay, I loved his whole arc. His very intimate friendship and only friendship with Janeway. But speaking of favorite episodes, I agree with Will. One of my favorites was the last flight of the Protostar. His moment with Dal and helping him sort of recover, not his ego, but understand you can make mistakes, but you got to keep going. It was a really beautiful scene. Like literally the animation in that episode was beautiful with the ship sailing on clouds, but also having Chakotay be sort of a father figure in that moment for Dal was really lovely because Dal doesn't know his parents, and he's been needing a father figure, needing a captain, and having that in Chakotay was lovely. What about for you all? Any character moments that really stand out for you in this season?
Well, I just want to say, Stan, that what you just described is what Prodigy does extremely well, keeping in mind that it is a show for kids. And that if the kids feel kind of lost or alienated from their parents sometimes, or just alone, a scene like that really resonates very strongly with the core audience of the show, and is also very Star Trek. So Prodigy has done an amazing job of being very kids-oriented and very Star Trek through the entire thing, which is just great. So that's my comment.
I have to say, like, I fully agree with Ken there. Is like, it seems like Prodigy has done such a good job of translating that Star Trek element to kids in so many different, very good, unique, specific ways that I think can almost get lost on a lot of adults, that if you're not looking at it through the lens of childhood, of like what you need in childhood. We always focus on, oh, it's a kid show, but adults can really like it too. And, oh, there's a lot of things for adults. And it's true, there is, and that it's a great testament to the writers and producers of the show. But at the same time, if you look at it through the lens of a kid who might not have the best home life, or might not have, maybe they really do want to be searching for that found family, this is giving them that hope and that idea of, oh, hey, I really can make this happen. I might meet a bunch of people that I don't look like or I don't think like, and we can actually become friends and do this together. And I think that's, in this day and age too, so many kids are so used to, oh, well, I'm in this bucket on social media, or I'm in this and I'm that. And it's kind of taking a step back and going, well, you can be friends with anyone that you enjoy being around, even if you have differences. And that's the reason that we want to celebrate those differences and not just, I mean, that's always been Star Trek, right? It's always infinite diversity and infinite combination. And I think Prodigy helps remind us that from a kid's perspective. I feel like that was long-winded, but.
And I would also say that in a movie that is not considered one of the best, has one of the best lines, 2 lines in it, or dialogue in it, in I think the entire 55 years of Star Trek. And that is, I thought you said people like us don't have families. And then Kirk says, I was wrong. And the concept of chosen family, which really carries through everything Star Trek from day one to now, and how that resonates with so many people across so many different people, whether it's kids, whether it's LGBTQ plus, whether it's whatever, the concept of chosen families and what that means, and that that's okay, and that family is about love, not necessarily about blood. I think it's very important and carries very strongly here through your core group of characters in Prodigy, and then the extended adult family of the Voyager cast. So I think it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Go ahead, Benji.
I found it like that I was following Gwyn a lot this season. Like she was very, very deeply like emo in season 1, and then again, like we've all been saying, like she connects with this chosen family, gets out of her situation, and then in season 2 we see her flourishing. We see her like being like humorous. She does some like really funny stuff here and there. And I've seen that happen to people. Like they get out of a bad situation into a positive situation, and they flourish as a person in their new role. And she does it without like completely abandoning her home and her people. She then goes on to take on a leadership role in establishing a dialogue with them. So I was like really surprised how much I took an interest in Gwyn's part in this season.
I'm actually glad that you talked about Gwyn, because I was going to sort of talk about the opposite side of the Trek coin with Dahl, and how much I enjoyed him going from completely reckless risk taker to calculated risk taker, which I've mentioned it a couple times in previous episodes, that there's always the risk taker character, there's always the Riker, there's always the Tom Paris, the sort of edgier character in Trek. I just appreciated getting to watch him sort of fine tune that skill from, if it's dangerous, I'll do it, to it's dangerous, I will do it, but let me think about how I'm going to go about doing it first, and just sort of applying that superpower, but with a Starfleet twist. There's got to be a backup plan. There's got to be redundancies. The things that we would expect from a heroic Star Trek character, he very slowly, added to his set of skills. So I personally enjoyed watching that entire arc from episode 1 of season 1 all the way till our most recent episode, and hopefully not our last episode.
Krista.
I wanted to mention in Imposter Syndrome, when they switched the personalities into the holo dupes, I really felt like they were very deliberate about that. It was very purposeful who they decided to switch with. Dahl was switched with Zero, Murph was switched with Gwen, and Jankum was switched with Rock. And I think by the end of the series, you see that the elements that are intrinsically those characters switch, and they merge, as Trev said. Dahl becomes a little bit more empathic. He becomes a little bit more thought forward about his actions. I think that it was purposeful, and I'm sort of sorry that we didn't, even though they gave us Parisi squares, I'm sort of sorry we didn't spend a little bit more time with Dahl speaking in a British accent. And Rock, being very hammer to fix something instead of using her ability to deconstruct something and reconstruct something. And I wish a little bit that we had spent a little more time with them. And I wish that the real characters could have actually made those switches. I think it was sort of a very subtle way to show that there is value in walking in another person's shoes. And it's not all surface level. It's everybody is capable of things. It's just some hide, some deflect, some do this, some do that. And I almost wish that it had happened to the real characters instead of the hollow characters.
I agree. I also wish that they got to interact. It would have been fun if them coming back is what I mean, they had episodes and episodes of adventure to have, but it would have been great to see them interacting with them after the glitch. Just be like, wait a minute, Dal being like, when did I get an accent? What's going on here? Super fun.
It was kind of a way to do the mirror universe and the existential crisis of a mirror universe without over sexualizing it, because it's for kids. Fuckers.
Yeah, I was thinking.
She said sternly.
Sternly, because it's for kids.
Children.
Yes. I was thinking about the past shows, what you were saying, Trev, about the characters, the sort of the characters that take on the risks. What's interesting is that at least in the shows up through the 80s and 90s, you had a character that was the alien. You had the Spock, the Data, the Odo, the Seven of Nine, and you primarily had a human crew with a standout alien or aliens. In this case, especially with our core crew, they're all aliens. But I would still say that the Spock or Data or Seven of Nine character here, they all sort of share that. But I do think that that's Zero, to the point about the episode of when Zero takes on the human form, and Zero is probably that character among a group of aliens that make up our core cast. But they all sort of share that Spock, Data, Odo moment in all of them, which I think is very, very cool in thinking about Star Trek Prodigy in relation to casts of the past and how they laid out the shows.
Well, I think that was also like one of the beautiful things about doing an animated show, that you don't have the restrictions of like, well, we can't afford to put all 8 main cast in extensive makeup every single morning to shoot for 16 hours a day. And we can finally explore and that was one of my favorite things in Prodigy, was seeing, just even at the Academy, seeing the more diverse actual aliens that are there, seeing this as an actual thriving universe that obviously we have, harkening back to The Chase, you have your bipedal humanoid aliens that have been seeded across the planets, but you also have all of those countless other aliens that have just evolved on their own in very different ways. You have the Medusans, and you have the melanoid slime devils, and all of the really unique, obviously changelings and things like that too. And we could actually see that in Prodigy, and it made it feel more realized, I think, to me, and it made everything almost feel more natural in Star Trek, because it was this evolution of where we've come from and everything that we've seen, with not just the cast, but in the entire franchise as a universe.
And it's interesting also to compare the 2 animated shows, right? So Lower Decks could have done that, but they didn't do it. And of course, Lower Decks is more adult and more comedy, and Prodigy is more straight up Star Trek, but for children. So comparing and contrasting Lower Decks and Prodigy from a point of view of approach might be something to talk about in a future episode of the Salon. But it's really interesting to look at those 2 shows and to see that Prodigy really embraced the non-human aspect of things in a very big way, whereas Lower Decks did, but didn't as much. Lower Decks was more like Next Generation style with the right number of humans and so forth, but the right number of humans in the sense of the right number of humans compared to the Next Generation in a casting
Wow,
standpoint.
way to be specious there.
But I'm
The
saying,
right number of
yes.
humans is
Yeah.
outnumbering aliens.
How
What
very
I meant
Vulcan of
was
you.
in comparison to what you would expect to see on a Next Generation or Deep Space
So
Nine.
this is
kind of
when
thing.
Ken comes out as president of the Confederation. Apparently, this is.
See, I was gonna
Yeah.
say he's a secret Vulcan because Lord knows they're all depicted as speciest, except for Spock.
Fascinating. Prodigy is more Star Trek. I agree with you, Sohail. I think Prodigy is more Star Trek than potentially. I mean, Lower Decks is Star Trek, of course, in its own way. But
I love that
Prodigy
you're saying
embraces-
you agree with Sohail when he's repeating something you said. That's not what's happening, Ken.
That's what I'm doing. I am agreeing with Sohail, agreeing with me.
I agree with you.
He's saying it's such a great point. It needs to be said a few more times.
Exactly.
He wasn't even agreeing, so Hale was just quoting what he said.
So okay, but
He just
still.
quoted it.
All right. Well, so
He's even saying we are not agreeing.
fine. We're not agreeing, Sohail. So this is just like every other day with ends with a Y. All right, good.
Oh goodness. What about we haven't talked about Rock. Anybody had thoughts that they want to share about Rock? I love this character. I think just kicking things off, she's the most childlike, right? She's the youngest until she was in that time loop for however long. But I loved some of her growth this season, really becoming more confident. Talking like when she talked to Dal, like, we're not here for your cockamamie schemes anymore. We're trying to get into the academy. She went toe to toe with a Klingon. Incredible stuff. Really, really excited to see her growth. Anybody else had thoughts on Rock? Trevor and then Krista.
I'm going to be courageous and controversial all at the same time. I was not super fond of Rock at the beginning. I found her slightly annoying.
Trevor hates children. You heard it here.
Okay, that's not a surprise. Like, that's really not a shock. But there was something magnificent both about the writing and the voice actress's delivery and her ability that just took me to finding Rock to be one of my favorite Star Trek characters. So the evolution was interesting. Child who couldn't be understood to speaking and kind of annoying me, but within a matter of a couple of episodes, slowly sort of just, I don't know, finding their footing and as she found her purpose, I was like happy for her. And it was a very weird, very three-dimensional journey for an animated character, and just very, very impressed. Because even though I talked about having a fondness for Dahl was not even as deep as Rock was. And so I just genuinely love the character, and love the character in a way that I don't recognize as animated.
Well, okay, so Trev, I'm going to agree with you. In the beginning, she was a little annoying Hermione Granger-ish in shitting all over everybody's tomfoolery. But she redeems herself to me so much because she just does not recognize problems as anything other than an opportunity. And she comes up with the word for it, opportunity, and she just can't be brought down. And in imposter syndrome, it literally doesn't matter how many rocks there are. They're all ride or die. They're all down. They're all going to be there for the family. And what I especially loved was while you were going through that episode, they were all trying to outdo one another or out scheme one another or out, physically superior one another. And Rock are like, hey, let's figure this out together. And they're high-fiving. It's like a Girl Scout meeting. The two of them get everybody together and they get shit done. And that's there is no problem she does not think she can solve. And coming from a person who went to school at a time where I wanted to do math and science, and they kept going, no, you really need to do home ec and sewing. And I was like, but I want to do wood shop. I want to play with car engines. And it wasn't available. I love the character of Rock. She is who she is. She's unapologetic about it. She's grown so much. And she is very excited about all things new and complicated and problematic. And she just gets through it. And there's something so admirable about that. There's something so in someone so young to not have their fire doused is something that really resonates for me, given the time period that I grew up, where that is, you weren't supposed to do science and math. So.
Well, in season 1, everyone wanted her to become the security chief because she was the biggest. She's made of, that would be the logical, as a child, that would be the thing. It was like the bigger person should be the security chief, but her pushing back on it and being like, no, I want to do the science and find her own path, I think is like, Rock's one of my favorite characters. Oh, anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. I love her so much. Rock's the best one. Anyway, Rock forever.
I love that at the beginning of the show, I was like, hey, when our special guest joins us, I'm going to do this very subtle thing at the bottom. Don't be weird about it.
I panicked.
And of course, it's Will's turn to chat, and I love it. No, this needs to be abrupt. I am so excited. Our special guest is waiting in the wings. We'll be bringing him on in a moment. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We are so excited to have with us co-executive producer and writer from Star Trek Prodigy, Aaron Waltke, will be joining us in just a moment. Let's beam him in.
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Hello, Aaron. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you this evening?
I'm good. What an introduction.
Well, we're so excited to have you. You've been in our chat a couple of times, providing some behind the scenes. It's always been appreciated. Really exciting to not just hear from you, but learn more about the show that we all love and love to talk about. So thank you for that, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, as anyone who's spoken with me knows, it's hard to get me to shut up about Star Trek once we start talking. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, every single one of us can join you in that bad habit. We're excited to talk about Star Trek every week. We've got, as you saw just a moment ago, our full senior staff of the Salon is here tonight. So we've got everybody has a question for you, and we're just so jazzed. I'm getting frantic here. But before we dive in, we can't waste the wax. We can't waste the time. We must first and always set an intention.
And in a historic Salon moment, this is the first time we have 2 candles going. So welcome, Aaron. Thank you for being here. It's quite exciting.
Wow, amazing. What an honor to be able to set an intention. Now, remind me, what do I do to set the intention? Do I just share something, or?
All you have to do is share your response to a very simple question. We think it's simple. We hope it's simple. Right. Which is just, what is your personal favorite bit of Star Trek headcanon? So it's never been seen on screen. No one else knows that it's true, but you know that it's true.
Sure. I would say my favorite personal piece of headcanon is that whenever you see a script that's on Captain Picard's chair or a boom mic that's dipping into frame. Those are ripples from the temporal wars that that have where an agent is just out off screen, taking explicit notes to make sure that everything happens just so. So if you happen to see like a reflection of a guy that looks like he's filming, he is filming. He's a time agent and he's there recording this for future posterity. So that way we know how things were supposed to go. That's my personal favorite headcanon.
I love it. I'm sure Stan loves it, and I know there's at least one other member of the Salon that is absolutely going to love that answer, and he will express that, I'm sure, with great joy and gratitude when he pops up shortly.
Yes, we may or may not have a DTI agent on the Salon. I do love it. The fun little gaff, so to speak, or just a fun part of the franchise at this point. Love it. All right, well, let's get into it. Like I said, we've got everybody with us. Everybody's excited to chat with you. The first person I'm going to bring up is Ken to kick us off. Ken.
Hello.
Hey, Aaron. How are you?
Greetings.
Thank you so much for joining us. Greetings. I am the official tosser of the group, the TOS fan of the group. So I was part of the 70s syndication. There it is, tosser alert, syndication generation. So when I first saw Star Trek, I was in my 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, which is sort of the audience that you're shooting for Prodigy. It was amazing for me how the original series resonated when I was young and taught me all kinds of lessons and became my whole lifetime of loving Star Trek. I was curious, when you were in your preteens, what was your Star Trek, and how did that Star Trek influence you as a young person and potentially influence your approach to Prodigy?
Well, my first exposure to Star Trek was when I was very young. I was a child of the 80s, so one of my first memories was sitting on the couch with my dad and watching as the saucer separated from the secondary hull, and it was very exciting, and I didn't know why. And I realized after the fact that it was, in fact, the pilot to Star Trek The Next Generation as it was premiering live way back in September of 1987. And that was a way that I kind of connected with my dad watching that. And then over the summers, both my parents worked either part-time or full-time. So there were stretches where I was kind of a latchkey kid, or I would be dropped off at my aunt's house to babysit. And so my aunt would put on like our local PBS station for whatever reason, would carry Star Trek, the original series. And so she was glad I was watching it, thinking it was educational. Meanwhile, there was like Orion slave women dances and Caliphate death matches, and Spock was in a Nazi uniform. And I was like, this is crazy. Why are they letting me watch this? So I didn't, my exposure to Star Trek, I don't have like a distinct memory of like this is when I liked it, because it was always just like a part of my, this is like, oh, this is what TV, this is what stories are. And then of course, like Deep Space Nine, my local Fox affiliate started airing it in order in syndication right when I would get home from school. And so I was able to binge watch it basically. They do one episode a day every day. And so I binge watched like the first season, and then I was like, this show is awesome. What's everybody complaining about? And thankfully, it seems like history has vindicated my opinions back then. And then, boy, there was a gateway for me, and I never stopped loving Star Trek. Was that the correct answer to your question?
Oh, absolutely. So,
okay.
But my question also is, so that your young self and the lessons you took from your young self, did that influence you on the approach to creating Prodigy, and how so, if so?
Yeah, I mean, I think my exposure to Star Trek was one that was very much in that kind of sweet spot of like the post TOS movies, and when Gene Roddenberry was kind of re-envisioning the ethos of sort of like a post scarcity future that where humanity truly embraced their better selves and offered those mandates of like they're not allowed to fight with each other and stuff like that in the first season. But I think when I joined Star Trek Prodigy, I certainly wanted to bring a lot of those basic ideas that it is possible for people to rise above their petty rivalries and strive to become their better selves. And I think it was always kind of in the back of our heads of like how can we kind of embrace that kind of idealism, that sort of hope punk realness, I guess, in a way that would be appealing to young people the way it was when I was a kid. Because I think it's easy to be cynical, and I think it's easy to be kind of grimdark or edgy in order to be cool. But I think that sincerity tends to last a little bit longer and stand the tests of time. And we wanted to embrace that, I think. And those feelings of like, even if you're not perfect, as most young people aren't, I certainly wasn't, that, if you kind of hang on to that moral compass and set your stars north and straight on till morning, maybe, just maybe, you could, like unmolded clay, you could be shaped into a better person. And that's the sort of stuff, that ethos is what we wanted to infuse into Prodigy.
Thank you, Aaron. Great answer. And thank you again for being part of our show. Really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and I would say you all do it beautifully. I love Prodigy very much. You and I have a very similar Trek intro. I'm a child of the 80s as well. One of my earliest memories is watching Star Trek, but also when Deep Space Nine came out, I was like, oh, this is the first new one that I'm going to be able to see from the very beginning. And my brother, sister, and I just begging our dad to let us watch the second hour of Emissary. He relented, and I've been hooked ever since.
Gosh, can you imagine what it would have been like if you just only saw the first half and then you had to just pick it up and try to figure out what happened?
It's such, especially back then when you're not streaming and can't just like.
Yeah, exactly.
And like
if you didn't have that VCR set, you were SOL.
Yeah, I remember very similar that there would be an episode once a week after school that I could watch. That would come on, and now, man, kids today they don't get how easy they have it. Speaking of kids, I think Trevor has a question about that.
What a great segue, Stan. So I think you'll probably find that there's a parental theme with pretty much every member of the Salon. We all sort of have a parental connection to Star Trek. You are a parent, but you were a writer before you became a parent. So I'm curious, how did becoming a parent affect your work? How did it affect your writing? How did it affect your approach to writing?
It's a good question. Sleep deprivation certainly was a big part of it. That certainly affected my general mental well-being. I think I always try to hang on to the kid at heart inside of me. Even though I'm now in my 40s, I never stop thinking about like that inner child me and like what excites me, what intrigues me, and what confuses me, and what would make me want to stay up late under the covers thinking about how Data's head was buried 500 years ago and was dug up by Mark Twain or whatever. So I think now that I have a kid, it's very. I have enough friends that have had children like a year or two ahead of me that I've learned that I have to be very careful about how I introduce like things that I like to them, because there's always that fear that you might get the backfire effect. And she's like, no, I'm going to become an accountant. I'm going to go join Wall Street. Which fine, if she wants to go make a $1 billion and then, go on her eat, pray, love journey, that's fine with me. But I don't want her to be scared away from Star Trek. As far as the writing goes, I don't know if it's changed my writing as much as it has like my reaction to other media. Like like I was watching an episode of Welcome to Wrexham, and I started tearing up because they started talking about a father-son relationship, and I was like, wow, I never would have cried at Ryan Reynolds' vanity football documentary if it wasn't having had a child. But I do feel like it's vindicating in a way, because I have a lot of parents reach out and talk about how much the work that I'm doing has helped them connect with their kids on finally they can have a show they can watch together and that sort of thing. And I feel that's all the more important now that I have a kid, to have something that I can share with her, and we can. And if anything, I think my experiences, being creative in spaces for like young people, has made me more attuned to my daughter's needs in a way where I always, in the very ethereal sense, would always be like I don't want to talk down to kids and I don't want to underestimate them. But now, like, I have a little toddler running around that clearly has like opinions on things, and I don't want to like just assume she's just a dumb baby, but that she actually has something that she really wants to say or express, even if she only can say like ball or I want that or mine. So it's an interesting experience being an artist and a parent. But I think, like all things, it's a work in progress in every sense of the phrase.
Yeah, I have little nieces, and like, I don't have kids, I probably won't, but I have little nieces, and it occurred to me that when I was a child, I spoke to adults like I would hear them speaking to each other, until it got commented on a lot, like, hey, you're a child. And so getting into Prodigy, I really appreciate the, you all don't talk down to children, you don't talk down to families. This is just a great Star Trek show. It's a great show for anybody. And there are very complicated concepts that you all are talking about in this show, like time travel and being good to each other, but without talking down. So it's a wonderful accomplishment. And I'm curious, just to dive more into Prodigy. How are you all feeling about the reception and the response to season 2 thus far?
I mean, it's been overwhelming. When we were making season 2, especially, I think we were just wanted to make the Star Trek we wanted to see, and ultimately, in this industry, you never know how much you're gonna get and how far you're gonna go with the story, or if you're gonna get to make more. So we've always been of the feeling of like, if we have some great ideas now, let's go for broke and we'll come up with more when season 3 comes. And so we kind of just made the story as that we wanted to see, with the characters that we felt in a way that it would honor them best, like bringing in Wesley Crusher and kind of completing that story, finding ways to kind of connect it loosely or directly with, I think, every other Star Trek show. We managed to do it in season 2. And certainly once we realized that not only time travel was kind of baked into the premise of season 2, but a rather complex time travel story, I think we were just like, let's just do it right. And if it gets a little confusing, that's okay, because we have kids that also are confused and you're kind of on the ride with them. But just as I kind of alluded to, I was that kid where, like, when I would see an episode of Star Trek or other challenging science fiction, and I just like turn it over in my head over and over again, like, how does that make sense? And I just sit on the playground or stay up late thinking about it until I had like some sense of how it might all work. And that spark of curiosity, I think, is all we can really hope for when creating content that is ostensibly consumed by younger audiences. And I think that if it's too complicated, then as long as you have a character call that out and point out what the need to know stuff is, that's fine. And then what Kate Mulgrew has pointed out a few times is that young people actually, I find, have a better time consuming complex ideas. They
Mm.
just absorb it as it is. It's only
Yeah.
us adults that turn everything over and bring to bear all of our baggage
Yeah.
that we get really pent up. Like, does it make sense? Can it be good? Is it right? But but kids are just like, cool. That's how time
Yeah.
travel works.
I would imagine
You know?
their willing suspension of disbelief is so much stronger than adults.
Yeah,
They're
because they
like-
take their cues from the characters, and the
Mhm.
characters' as long as their emotional journey is clear, you can tell any story you'd like. And I think Marvel obviously has told some very complicated stories, with perhaps varying success, but I think a lot of them work quite well because you're there with the characters that aren't necessarily like quantum physicists. They're just a dude who can throw a shield real good. and so
look, they're
like
doing it. I agree.
exactly. That's America's ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, Prodigy. The reception has been great, and the fact that so many people are being so effusive about it and spreading the word is really gratifying to us. That we were finally able to get it out there for people to see and judge for themselves. Some people are saying like, "Oh, it's the best Star Trek since Deep Space Nine season 6," and I was like, "You can't take that back. You said it." But even the fact that people are embracing it for what it is, and the highest compliment I see is I see posts every day now of people saying like, I didn't give this show a shot. I saw somebody else recommend it. I just finished watching it. It's incredible. You need to see it now. And that kind of like snowball effect is how something that is new and different manages to slowly build an audience until it hits that critical mass. So the fact that it's really taking off in that way is tremendously gratifying to all of us.
Yeah, you got a lot of agreement in the chat here. We're all loving Prodigy. I'm gonna bring in Benji to dive into it a little bit more. Benji, hello.
Hi, Aaron.
Hello.
I'm gonna try not to throw up. Yeah, and like just like you were saying, like I legitimately think this has been one of the best seasons of Star Trek. So to that end, can you walk us through some of the prep for this season in particular, like how you decided which stories to dive into? I'm particularly interested to know if there were particular themes that you wanted to explore, so that kind of thing.
Yeah. So when we finished season 1, there were some obvious like plot threads that we had left dangling with the full intention of exploring them further in season 2. One being obviously the unfinished business with Gwyn's homeworld of Solom. We knew that it was sort of like a fait accompli, that unless something drastic was done, when whoever makes first contact with them arrives, then it would tear their society apart unless it was done in perhaps a more intentional way. And then the other one being Chakotay was still lost in the wormhole, and he was stuck in an alternate future reality with seemingly no way home. So we knew we had to address those kind of plot angles and all of the sort of emotional sort of gnarliness that comes with them. But from a 30,000 feet perspective, we also loved that we could shake it up a little bit. Like first season was very just kids have a starship, pure wish fulfillment. I'm the captain now, kind of like let's go on adventures. But then they realized that you can't just eat cake for breakfast every day, and like there is a benefit of being part of a bigger movement and a bigger institution, and you can achieve great things if you can become a little bit less selfish and more embracing the collective. And so we wanted to see that transition, and whereas the first season was them hedging all their bets and just wanting to get a shot to join the Starfleet. And then season 2 is sort of like a be careful what you wish for kind of thing. Like, you're in Starfleet now. Now can you prove that you earned that position? And thematically, I think we looked at it a little bit like And this is what kind of sold Nickelodeon on the idea, which is like that transition that kids make when they go from like middle school to high school or high school to college. Whereas, you think you've got very comfortable in your status quo with your little group of friends, and then you're suddenly in this much, much bigger pond. And you have to completely reinvent who you are and how you fit into all of that. And there's a lot of growing pains that come with that. Like some of your friends might find other cliques, and now you are kind of cast to the wind, and you have to look deep inside yourself and say, who am I really now that I have everything I thought I wanted? And that was really interesting to us, especially with Dahl, who, at least in terms of the educational aspect of Starfleet Academy and what it represents, we kind of liked the idea that of exploring different ways to learn. And not everybody is like automatically an academic. Not everybody is cut out to be a scientist. Not everybody is cut out to be a captain even. And on top of that, you don't necessarily know where you're going to land until you've actually explored in a figurative and literal sense, like who you are. And so Dal's journey was like starting from a place of like, I have to be captain or I'm not worth anything. And we felt that was not a great place to leave his character, and instead it was sort of a journey towards I guess kind of like a zen peace of it's okay if you can be present now and just kind of take the moments as they come, and grow and embrace the fact that this is a journey as much as anything else. That's where the big turning point for his character was, especially the mentorship of Chakotay. Was built on the idea that sometimes when you're feeling lost, you just have to go where you're needed most, and that's what Dal ultimately realizes. Like it's maybe I will be captain someday, but right now I need to find where I'm needed most, and I think that's a great lesson for everybody. So those are a lot of the themes that we really wanted to explore in season 2. And then, as far as the nuts and bolts of like who we were going to bring in and how and what, we tried a lot of configurations of like, I think we even just as a thought experiment said like, what if they find rescue Chakotay by like episode 5? And then we're like, well, that would feel pretty unsatisfying probably. Just to have all this build up at the end of season 1, like we're gonna go on this grand adventure to find Chakotay, and then like, oh, we got him. Now what? So
I mean, they could have killed him. Just
I mean,
if we're
it was
spitballing.
possible. Yeah, I mean, anything is possible. True, but we realized that the season, we had to look at it holistically, or none of the stories would have paid off properly, which is why you see a lot more serialization this season. You also see it's sort of parabolic in shape, where they go very far afield to go find Chakotay, and then they have to come back, and then the things they left behind left to fester, specifically Solum and Essentia and whatnot. They come home to reap the whirlwind, and realize that you can't run away from your problems, and you do in fact have to. The chickens will come home to roost. Having taken the things they learned about themselves and how to function as a crew and the importance of their role in the greater Starfleet, that it gives them exactly what they need in order to survive that encounter in a way that they wouldn't have before. So those are all things that we wanted to explore in season 2. And then Wesley Crusher, the big twist of the season, I guess, was something we also built in very early on, from, I guess, a meta perspective, we didn't want our show to only be like a Voyager sequel. We wanted it to start seeding in it and have it be a sequel to all of Star Trek. And so that on top of like, well, who could help guide them through this sort of like timey-wimey Gordian knot that they've been tied into, and perhaps had some connection to young people and all of that. There was just like Wesley Crusher. And then we realized that there was that big dangling mystery of like what happened with his story. Because the last we saw of him, he walked off screen with the Traveler to fulfill a grand destiny which was never elucidated again. And we were like, well, maybe we could finally fill in that story of what his role as a Traveler was. And it was really wonderful that we got the opportunity to do that, and that Will Wheaton was so on board for it. We're so grateful that people liked that we took those risks and didn't just have him as a fun cameo, but actually really embraced him as a character for our season.
Yeah, we did. We speaking of fun cameos, noted in the chat.
Yes, so that was we were aware of his random appearance in Nemesis, but since he doesn't have a speaking line and it's never really addressed at all anywhere, we kind of went with what was Will Wheaton's headcanon, which is like he appeared there as a Traveler, and as we saw in, I think, the final Traveler episode, the Travelers can change their outfits and appearance however they want to match their surroundings so that they don't stand out. And it kind of makes sense that Wesley would want to be there for the wedding, even if he was incognito, as it were, sort of a plainclothes spy, time spy, I guess, and then vanished off into the ether shortly thereafter.
Absolutely. Benji, thank you very much. I want to bring up Joanne for our next question. Joanne, hello.
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 Hi, Aaron. It's great to talk to you today. And, let's look at kind of the converse of that. Were there some themes or characters that were just off limits for you for whatever reason?
I don't think there were any characters that were necessarily like off limits. I think the limitations that we had really came down to are they available and are they willing to do it? And sometimes it came down to the fact that we either couldn't afford them or the role wasn't big enough that it merited interest. For instance, in episode 5 of season 2, we have I think it's episode 5, the temporal mechanics, might be episode 4, that when we finally see the video of Temporal Mechanics 101 with Dr. Aaron explaining the universe. We briefly flirted with the idea of like it could be a training video that was filmed by Geordie LaForge or by Miles O'Brien. We went out to both, and both of them said like, this is a nothing role. Like, actually write something for our characters, and maybe we'll do it. But we were like, that's a fair point. Like, you don't want to. They have nothing to prove, and they're protective of their characters, and if they wanted to come back, they want it to be their actual character, right? And so like that was mostly the limitations we had. I think very briefly when like there was about a week or so when we were kind of blue skying, like, okay, if this episode's about like, time running amok, time travel, multi dimensions and that sort of thing, is there a world, what dimensions in Star Trek could we explore as an animated series that other shows might not be able to or might not think to? And I think at one point we talked about the idea of like, oh, what if they breached into the Kelvinverse and had an adventure with Kelvinverse Kirk. We played with that, and then it became very clear that just with all all the stuff that they were developing with the movies, like they were like, we haven't figured out the movies yet. No, you can't. Don't.
I was going to say,
please.
if you all gave Star Trek 4 via Prodigy season 2, that would have been an incredible feat. And you all already did some incredible stuff this season.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think it was for the best that we didn't push that direction, because we had so much going on already. I think we probably wouldn't have been able to service that story as well as it would have been like, if we were to bring in Captain Pike in, or Captain Kirk or whoever, it would probably be in a role similar like to what Wesley has, where it's like if we're gonna build a model and we're gonna hire the guy to be a voice actor and bring the role on, let's have him be on for like half the season. And I think having Kirk just hanging out on the Protostar, as fun as that idea is, it would have been maybe too much to also have Gwen dealing with Essentia and this and that. So, but that's the fun of having that sort of open mind of just when you're just kind of brainstorming. It's like, what is the craziest, boldest swings we can take, and then you just kind of you peel away the onion down to its core of what is actually possible and what you have to save for a future season. And so those are some of the things that were perhaps left on the cutting room floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm gonna bring up Matt now, our resident DTI agent, time travel expert. Matt, hello.
Yeah, before I really get into my question, Aaron, I did get a message from both Luxley and Dulmer. They want to have a conversation with you after this. It has nothing, no specific topic was broached, but I have a feeling that there's a few things they want to ask just out of curiosity.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll do my best to answer without violating the Temporal Prime Directive.
Well, you're doing so well at that already. So that's personally, I do want to say I obviously am a huge time travel nerd. It's been my favorite continuing thing in Star Trek, just from TOS all the way through. I love seeing how it's approached, and I really want to say amazing kudos to you, the entire writing staff, for how you executed it this season. Just how holistically you thought about it, and just the care and love and explanation with everything. So I mean, 10 out of 10. I could not have wanted a better thing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That means a lot from another time travel nerd, because I was that time travel nerd in the room, and I think when it became clear that this season we couldn't just ignore it or sweep it under the rug, the other writers, the Hagemans included, were sort of groaning like, "Oh God, we have to do time travel." But I was like, "Let me in, Coach. I can do it. I know. I've been thinking about this for 40 years."
I feel that on a very deep, visceral level, honestly, because so many people are, "Oh God, I don't want to." I mean, half the Salon staff too are like, "I don't
Sure.
want to hear another time travel episode. It makes my head." To Janeway's point, it just makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
And to that point, my question actually comes. Kate has obviously brought up in several different interviews about how Star Trek is kind of that perfect platform to talk to kids, and how she was surprised no one had really brought it up before Prodigy. So my question is, when you approached Star Trek Prodigy, did you approach it more as a Star Trek show first, or was it more of a kids show first, or how did you kind of blend those together?
So we approached it as a Star Trek show with elements that could be accessible by all ages. And I think in the first season, I think there was a little bit of we kind of had to find our way through the dark of like what that means for a Star Trek show, which has been, played fairly straight for the most part, and fairly like adult and very kind of like, not to say there isn't stuff that the children don't like about Star Trek, but I think a lot of the stuff that you think of when you think of a Star Trek show, it's hard to think of like a modern like teenager to sit down and say, no, it gets really good when, just wait for Act 4. And so I think that our balancing act, especially the first season, was like, how can we have sort of like a vivacious, fun, adventure-y tone that wouldn't completely, break the universe of Star Trek, which we were able to, I think, find it. But what really excited us is like, okay, we start with these kind of like rambunctious, reckless teenagers that have been thrown into this stagecoach, this wagon train to the stars. And now they have to fake it till they make it and slowly embrace all of these kind of ideals and institutional sort of rules, I guess, that in a way that seems appealing and interesting, and not just like a teacher saying, this is all the stuff you have to do to not have fun. But instead, it's more like, no, Star Trek is cool because you're working together and discovering things that none of us, and achieving things that none of us would be able to do by ourselves. And seeing that sort of like that steel sharpening steel, and all these different divisions writ large as these kids kind of find their tracks and their sort of vocations in life. That is when I think it really started to crank into high gear, and then just slowly, episode by episode, seeing them mold from the most reckless, arguably worst Starfleet crew into something that's like, oh, actually, if you give people a chance and provide them the opportunity and the education, anybody can achieve anything. And that is what excited us about the series, and having a show that the audiences could grow up with our characters. Those are the types of stories we love to tell.
Thank you, Aaron. That means a lot. And it was such a good answer. I will forgive you for destroying so many sovereign classes at the end of season 1. So
they got better.
Thank you. Okay, decommissioned is fine.
Both Matt and I have a sovereign class tattooed onto our bodies.
Sure.
Big fan of the class.
Well, I think at the time we were the first show to bring a sovereign class into the TV universe.
You were
because our show takes so long to make. The other shows like managed to put a bunch of stuff in before ours made it to air. But we literally, the week we started writing, like literally, I think the next day a lawyer came in and said, "Look, Paramount and CBS are merging. We think you can use this stuff, but like maybe don't use it just in case the merger doesn't happen." And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm putting in I'm putting it all in. Yes. Well, it'll sort itself out by the time this show comes out.
And using an intellectual property from the early 2000s with Bridge Commander in there too, I think probably helped a little. Yes. Like no one's going to use. They're not going to question that. That's fine.
Exactly.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Matt. Sure. I want to bring Will up. Will, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining us. My question is about you're super active in the online Star Trek community. Was that like a conscious choice? I think like between you and maybe Thomas Maroney, who heads Star Trek Online, are probably the most two active creators in the Star Trek universe online. I guess was that an active thing? You just participate in it? Do you like doing that? For good or bad? Like what is your response to it? I find that you're the one person who can like talk to people.
Yeah.
And not make people hate your show as a result.
Well, I'm terminally online, and then I'm also sort of annoyingly positive and optimistic. So I think that combination tends to bring out people that are willing to engage in civic discourse, and so I like doing it. It's fun. I have found that especially in the streaming age, sometimes there are things that slip through the cracks, or somebody might just have nowhere to ask, like if it's a specific question about lore, or hey, where can I find your show, or has this episode come out yet, or I was confused about this. And if people reach out to me and ask me that question, as long as it doesn't violate an NDA or something, I'm always happy to answer. I've been that way with all of my shows that I've worked on. The Troll Hunters and Tales of Arcadia community, which was created by Guillermo del Toro. I also became kind of a point of contact for a lot of people that really liked that series. And it's engaging, and maybe it's just because of the fandoms I happen to participate in, but I have found very little toxicity, at least interacting with me. And there's only been a few occasions where somebody kind of comes at me, and then I will just very engage with them as a human does, and just say like, hey, I think you're mistaken on this. Here's why. And then I would say 9 times out of 10, they actually are like, you know what? Actually, respect. I get it. And I get kind of a thrill from connecting with people, but especially if I can change somebody's mind, if they are coming at it from a place that is just misinformed, I'm always happy to inform. So that
Well, we'll have some aggressive follow-ups, so that perspective might.
I do. Well, okay. Well, I also was going to say you're very quick at weaponizing Star Trek lore to like shut people up. So I'm very appreciative of that. Like you did at one
Sure.
point in our chat when we talked about how the Voyager A doesn't have impulse engines. You just went ablative armor in the chat, and I was like, well, that's some shit. I was just like, you can't just throw that out there. Like me and Stan joke about it still. Anyway, so I had some other stuff about the fan communities. This is a little more pointed, but like I feel like the start, if you hear that shaking, it was my dog. But I like the fan community around Prodigy really brought it to Netflix. Like people rented fucking planes. Like that's crazy. But do you think that sometimes a studio overreacts to a fan base? And this is more pointed at another series that has a star in the name that recently canceled the show. What do you think that is where's the balance? Like
Where's the
as a
balance?
fan, sometimes I'm like my aggression towards like my love for a show or a franchise, where does that fall off? As like a creator of a show, where do you
I mean,
pause with that?
You have to be careful to trust your own instincts, I have found, because it's easy to see initial reactions and then just rethink everything and tear things down to the studs. But I have found that if you only give audiences what they want, then they'll never get anything new.
Right.
And you just have to have the confidence to play in the sandbox, but also build new sandcastles or bring new toys in a way that feels organic, and hopefully they'll come along for the ride. And I think Star Trek, the cycle is always, hey, that's different. I don't know if that's right. And then the show will go on a little bit and like, hey, that one was actually pretty good. And then flash forward 3 to 4 years later, it's like, hey, that show's actually great. And then the end of the cycle is that's actually the best Star Trek show. And so,
right.
I think that what I have learned with, and this is again my terminal online persona, that if you look at it simply from a mathematical perspective, let's say you make a show that has 30 million viewers, and 1% of them really don't like it. 1% of 30 million is still, 30,000 people screaming at you? So that feels like a lot of people, but it's not everybody. And so but the way that the internet can kind of coalesce like-minded people, they suddenly become like a force to be reckoned with. So I guess I have found that you really just have to trust your own instincts and engage with the audience on an earnest and straightforward level. And if the ones that will come along for the ride hopefully will. And I think if you really are trying to make a show that is amazing, nobody sets out to make a bad show. Nobody sets out to make a bad movie. But the hope is they'll eventually be forgiving enough, and you'll give them enough of what they didn't know they wanted, that time will be the ultimate judge of how successful a piece of art is. I don't know if like completely tossing everything out just based on some people that prejudge something is the best strategy, but I don't see it happen that often. The notable exceptions, as you've said, notwithstanding.
Right. Well, thank you. That was it. I don't. Was that the questions you were referring to, Stanley, or were you referring to the joke
Yes.
ones I made? Oh, okay, great. Anyway,
Aaron, if you have time, and after we roll the credits, if you want to stick around, we have some chaotic questions.
There's some dumb questions. I have questions
Yeah,
about Jillian that must be answered.
Let's do a chaotic lightning round. That sounds fun.
We'll throw them on the Patreon or something.
Boy, if you want chaos, boy, did you join the right show.
Yes.
Also wanted to just comment really quickly that as an OG Niner, I have seen that trend like firsthand.
Yeah.
This
Sure.
is different and it sucks. And oh my god, this is amazing. It's a wild ride and it's fun to be on.
I mean, TNG, the first day was just like the people panning it and saying, you know, Kirk, this is not, you know, and like, but then now it's part of the pantheon. So you just have to be patient, and if you like something, just like it. Don't worry about what other people think.
Yeah. No, it's
right,
very true.
Will.
Well, I will say also, you have beat 2 Star Trek curses, with the first season always being a disaster and then waiting for the second or the third season to have a beard. I would say you guys found your proverbial third season beard a season early. So congratulations. You're
Thank you.
precocious children over there at Prodigy.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like I had a cheat code, but because I had seen every episode of Star Trek, so I knew where all the pits were. I mean, I was trying to navigate around. But thank you.
Where's the Shades of Grey episode of not Shades
No code of honor in this show, hopefully.
No code of honor, but I do perversely like clip shows. I think maybe just because it's just like a chance to be, I remember that episode. That was
you
a
know
good
who did it?
episode.
Throwing in season 3, pitch it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna save on budget with the clip show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Thank you, Will. I'm gonna bring in Krista to round us out before we get into our what we're calling our trans warp round. Krista, close out the main viewer portion.
Oh,
you're still on mute, Krista. For the first time ever, Krista found the mute button.
Fuck. So I've had some wine. Here's the thing. When I was a kid, we had PBS, and Mr. Rogers was pretty much everything I wanted a parent to be. Schoolhouse Rock was educational. It was all geared towards emotional education. My nephew visited about a month ago, and he was describing to me a difficult situation that he had with a friend, and he was talking about how he handled it. And his comment was, "I'm a goldfish." I had not watched Ted Lasso, so I did not understand what he was referring to. But I did understand that it was something that spoke to him that he was going to carry along with him as kind of a guide. And I'm wondering if there is a theme, if there's an overriding idea that now or in the future, you would like the children of today to carry as a guide, something that they refer to, even if they unconsciously don't realize it. I mean, I don't realize I'm thinking back to Mr. Rogers, but I am. I can still hear Schoolhouse Rock. So
yeah, I think maybe just it's the Boy Scout in me, but I think the thing I hope kids carry with them, from our show or anything that they is be kind, be curious, but also defend the ones you love. And I think that if you can do those 3 things, then you'll go quite far and towards being a good person in this world, I think. Nobody's perfect, but as long as you strive to be better, that's all you can do.
all right. I like it. That's a good answer. I approve.
Thank you.
I approve your answer.
Thank you, Krista. Great
lightning round.
Great question to round us out. But yes, we are going to move into what I am calling our trans warp round. Let me bring the crew back in.
Drinking.
And here we
Wow,
are.
this might be the most Zoomers I've seen on one call.
Thank you for calling me young.
Oh, yeah, Zoomers.
Yes. But let's get into our trans warp. All right, Aaron, these are questions or fan theories. We would love to have you either confirm, deny, you use that NDA as an excuse to not answer, whatever works for you.
Sure.
So I've got a couple here for you. Number 1, Dal and Gwen are no longer dating.
So I think that season 2, we wanted to explore that kind of question mark that I think a lot of teens go through of like, are we an item? Aren't we an item? And then as soon as like things got serious, it kind of felt odd for Dal to be like, yeah, but actually, like, what about that kiss? I know you're dying, but like, so we wanted to kind of have that sort of will they, won't they question mark as kind of just embracing that as for them as teens. So are they still dating, or will they date again? Did they ever date? These are the questions that keep teenagers up late at night, and certainly
Yes.
Dal and Gwen.
Indeed. Similarly, Chakotay and Janeway have a wonderfully intimate friendship, and that's it.
Yes. I think that you could certainly, just even going back to Voyager, say that there was a chemistry there. I think the question, is there more than a friendship, is open to interpretation. I'll put it that way.
I'll allow
I
it.
know some people like it, some people don't. That I'm saying it's open to interpretation.
We've discussed this many times here on the pod. Yeah, lots of varied opinions there. All right, number 3. There was never a real Ensign Essentia, or is there a body somewhere out there, and we're gonna get a Star Trek Stand By Me for season 3.
Well, we already have Will Wheaton, so
Bring him back.
Yeah. So yeah, I think logically there was in fact an ensign. There probably was an Ensign Essentia that she may have assumed the identity of. The alternative being that she hacked into Starfleet systems and just invented such a person. So I don't think we can canonically said one way or the other, so I don't want to say it's definitely one or the other in case we want to explore that in a future season. But I think you could certainly do either. I think both are equally nefarious for different reasons.
Love it. Next one. When the Doctor is on a ship full of hollow emitters, is his mobile emitter just for fashion and not the actual device?
That's an interesting question. I believe in season 6 of Voyager, the Doctor actually started beaming around the ship with his mobile emitter. There's even I think it might have been Tinker Tailor's Doctor Spy or whatever that episode is called, where he appears in the he appears in while wearing his mobile emitter in the room, and Chakotay is like, "Whoa, that was fast!" And he's like, "You said I had to be here right away." So, it could be either he has just integrated it into his holo program, and you never know if it's there or not, or it's beamed around the ship. It's up to you to decide.
Nice. It was suggested a few weeks back. I think it may have been Will that the Doctor consider going full Disco Bones and make it an amulet instead of on the shoulder.
Yes,
But I wanted like the disco track suit with just the mobile emitter just hanging around.
Or maybe he could be like Rimmer from Red Dwarf and just have it right on his forehead.
Next one. Dr. Noam is actually Kuros from the think tank, planning a long revenge on Janeway, but just keeps getting delayed by Essentia's bullshit.
I kind of love that idea. I read some cracked out fan theory that every single character that was played by the same person was in fact the same person, but just from different time periods and alternate realities beaming it. It was so crazy. That'd be such a funny idea, though. All characters played by Jason Alexander are in fact the same character at different phases of their life.
Thank you for that beautiful segue into plugging my next podcast idea. I have a theory that every Julia Roberts movie is just another story about the same woman. It works. I have a 10-episode arc planned. But back to the transwarp round, our last one. Jillian chooses to be naked rather than wear a uniform like the Cerritos whales.
Yeah, she's enlightened. she realizes that clothing doesn't need it is a social construct, and we should do away with it.
Yes. Star Trek Jillian Wynn. What's next for you, Aaron? When's Alex going to give you the keys to a live action, and is it going to be Star Trek Jillian? Would you want to do that?
I mean,
Indian.
people who know me know that I've been a cetacean ops proponent for as long as I've been alive. I think before I even uh, it was announced that Star Trek Prodigy was going, I had like a Twitter thread that was just elucidating all the ways that cetacean ops had appeared in Star Trek pre Lower Decks in our show, and that was like my first viral Twitter thread. So I would do anything with cetacean tops at any time, all the time. I was very glad that we could finally kind of show it in action and not just as a joke, and see how like, oh, they are really good at 4-dimensional navigation. I didn't think about that. But as far as what's next, that is something I probably need to NDA about, but I have some cool stuff in the pipeline that I'll share as soon as I can.
Awesome. Excited. And I was about to say eagle-eyed, but then I was going to talk about hearing. What animal has good hearing? So people who were paying attention noted you saying season 3 in a couple of interesting ways. We're all hoping for a season 3. We love Star Trek Prodigy. What more can we and others listening to this do to help make that dream a reality?
Sure. So, as you may or may not know, like it's all data driven, right? So Netflix happens to collect and release data in 6-month increments, and season 2 is in fact in the 6-month increment for July through December. So they're still collecting that data. So keep watching, rewatching. Find 3 people who haven't seen it and convince them to binge it, and watch it to completion. Like watch all the episodes, have it running in the background if you need to. Those are all the things that matter the most to Netflix. And also, be sure to watch other Netflix shows. If you have the account already, watch Star Trek Prodigy, then go check out Bridgerton and see that there's crossover there.
Ooh,
and
I've been rewatching, and whenever like this week when I'm not watching Agatha All Along, that I'm now obsessed with. Prodigy has been on the background the 10 weeks that we've been talking about season 2. But that's a really interesting point about the crossover about like, so anybody
I think
it's like me probably loves Prodigy according to my Netflix data.
yeah. I think watching the show is the most important, but certainly the fact that the retention and checking out other Netflix stuff is also important to them. Other ways to help is buy the merchandise when it comes out. Pre-order the DVD and Blu-rays. That lowers the cost for CBS to produce it, and so they can get a sense of how much it would cost to make more. These aren't revolutionary ideas, but they are the thing to do. And season 1 came out and did quite well. I think something like 10.3 million hours watched in the first 6 months for a show that had already been on the air for 2 years. That's pretty good. So we don't know what season 2 is yet. That data is still being collected, but now is the time to watch it and tell your friends and twist their arms and say, hey, if you want all this amazing stuff from a Star Trek show, it's all in Star Trek Prodigy. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Can I ask a real quick question? So from Go, Aaron, so if season 3 from Go, how long would it take to get to episode 1 to air, do you think?
So if like we started tomorrow, I think usually it takes to produce a 1 episode of Prodigy soup to nuts, it takes about a year and a half thereabouts, but then it's what's called a waterfall schedule. So you have like this episode 1 starts, and then 2 weeks later episode 2 starts, then episode 3 starts. So like they all kind of like are working on different phases in succession. But I know that sounds like a long time, but I implore you to remember that's the way all television is made now.
Right.
There's a 3-year gap between seasons of Game of Thrones shows. there's a 2-year gap between seasons of The Last of Us. Like, it's just how TV seasons are made. So I promise you it'll go by faster than you think, and you'll be excited for season 3 when it comes.
And we waited,
Absolutely.
what, 20 years between end of TNG to Picard. So, hey, it was like a blink of the eye. It was
exactly
another Voyager reference, just a blink of the eye.
Yes.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna click on the credits here for a second. If you can stick around, we'll have some more chaos for you specifically. But publicly want to thank you before we click that button, and thank our audience for joining us. Please do like and subscribe at Salon Trek, all of the places you find us. We're on Spotify, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Blue Sky. Check out that Patreon. We've got some fun free stuff, and coming soon for our $5 supporters, helping us cover the costs of the Salon, will be our Devil's Due commentary. We're recording that this weekend and have it out to you all in a couple of weeks. We will be back, not next week. What's the date? Yes, we are off next week, but we will see you all in 2 weeks. Programming TBD. Trevor told me what we're going to do, but I don't remember it. So it's going to be a fun surprise for everybody. And until then, we hope everybody lives long and prospers, particularly you, Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night, everybody.
My pleasure.
All hands abandon ship. Proceed to the nearest evacuation zone immediately.